It's become more urgent to help people, given that the fighting now is in the south.
Since the start of the Israel-Hamas war on October 7th, Sammy Nabulsi says he has helped dozens of American citizens and their family members evacuate Gaza. It's an unlikely role for the 34-year-old Boston real estate lawyer.
I never expected myself to be doing this. Long days, very long nights, little sleep. There isn't an alternative. These people need help.
Amid a worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, Nabulsi spoke with the Wall Street Journal about his approach for helping evacuate Americans from danger.
I see a path here to convince them to put the mom and dad on the list. I don't know about the brothers and sisters and their family.
All day long, Nabulsi fields call after call from Americans desperate to get their family members out of Gaza.
When I'm contacted, the person on the phone is frantic. It's not, hey, I've got relatives, I'm trying to get them out. No, it's emergency situation.
Hamas militants stormed southern Israel on October 7th, carrying out terrorist attacks. More than 1,200 people were killed, including over 300 soldiers, according to Israeli authorities. Israel responded with a campaign of airstrikes followed by a ground invasion. The fighting has flattened neighborhoods and displaced more than 1 million Gazans from their homes. More than 17,000 people have been killed in Gaza during the war, most of them women and children, according to authorities in the Palestinian enclave. The figures don't distinguish between militants and civilians.
My approach for getting families out, frankly, and it shouldn't have to be this way, but it is, it's case by case.
The end goal is to get them a coveted spot on the U.S. State Department evacuee list to determine who can cross the Rafah border out of Gaza.
Some people just don't even know how to get on the list. Sometimes it's a matter of advocacy. It's a sibling who the State Department is not willing to help. And so now it's, well, we need to try to get a senator involved. We need to get a representative involved. Sometimes it's just trying to get information abroad.
Before the war broke out, Nabulsi had little experience in immigration law, let alone evacuation strategies. But on October 11th, he received a frantic phone call from his wife telling him their family friends were trapped in Gaza. Aboud Ukal, his wife, and their 1-year-old son, all Americans, were visiting family in the northern part of the enclave when the war began.
It was immediately on October 7th that we realized we needed to get out of there as soon as possible.
This is the actual main gate, and this is where the gate that people, travelers, wishing to travel have to be processed through, so you can see the people waiting there.
For days, the Ukal family reached out to nearby embassies and the State Department, but no one could give them any information. That's when Nabulsi got involved. He called elected officials, members of the State Department, and even people outside of the U.S. in Lebanon and Egypt.
Every single day I was in touch with elected officials, started certainly with Massachusetts, but by the end of it, it was countrywide. Every day I was giving interviews to newspapers, local and national TV channels, really anybody who would listen.
But what do you understand to be the problem about getting Americans out? What's holding this up?
The problem is the United States government, President Biden, Secretary Blinken, they're not focusing on this issue at all.
A spokesperson for the State Department said the first month of the crisis was a complex security environment that required intensive negotiations and coordination. On November 1st, Nabulsi finally had good news to share. He messaged the Ukals that they were on the list. Thanks in part to his efforts and connections, they crossed the Rafah border into Egypt on November 2nd, then made it home safely to Massachusetts.
And what over time I learned was the plight of hundreds of other U.S. citizens, both there and here, trying to get family members out of Gaza.
The State Department says it's in touch with about 300 U.S. citizens, legal permanent residents, and their immediate family members who are still trapped in Gaza. Of those 300, about 50 are U.S. citizens. After that success, Nabulsi was flooded with calls, emails, and messages from other Americans trying to get their loved ones out of Gaza.
From the Rafah crossing.
People also began reaching out to him for another reason, to help.
I didn't have these contacts, whether it was in the media, elected officials, a Lebanese general, and others who are trying to help. It was just people who heard the story of fellow American citizens who were trapped in Gaza, who just wanted to offer any assistance that they could. And that's how we just through snowballing effort got in touch with all kinds of people.
And as the situation in Gaza rapidly changes, it's created more challenges for getting people out.
I think the biggest challenge is that there is no place safe. So even when you hit south, where we were staying in Rafah, we've had several airstrikes that hit a few hundred feet away from the house that we were staying in. We've had the walls literally crack, and that's how intense the bombardments were. And that was supposed to be a safe zone.
On December 3rd, Israel began sharply expanding its evacuation orders in the Gaza Strip as it launched a ground invasion in the south.
My fear now is we can do all the advocacy we want here in the United States, but I don't know that they have a forum over there to then advocate. And that's going to make it very difficult to get Americans out, to get their relatives out.
This, combined with dwindling food, water, and fuel resources, has complicated Nabulsi's efforts.
Transportation has been a major issue. Trying to coordinate and arrange for alternative travel to the Rafah border crossing. So now every next day is not promised for the people we're helping. So it makes every case immediate and urgent.
Some Americans in Gaza are reluctant to leave other family members behind, like Ukal's family.
The current situation is that my parents are on the list. They are American citizens. They can leave Gaza. My mom says there's no way that she could stomach leaving 2 sons, 2 daughters, several grandchildren behind in Gaza.
None of Ukal's siblings in Gaza are American citizens, except for his youngest brother. This severely limits their evacuation eligibility.
Right now it's parents, children, and unmarried siblings under the age of 21. I've been trying to advocate to expand that eligibility to include all siblings.
There are other issues at the border, too.
There's been several incidents where parents who are American would be on the list and their young child who's also American would not be on the list, or the other way around. And you'd see people crying at the crossing, pleading, saying, how can I leave my 3-year-old son behind?
While Nabulsi is still deeply involved with evacuating citizens out of Gaza, his efforts have also shifted into the realm of policy.
I spent the last couple of days down in D.C. trying to get senators and representatives to advocate to the State Department to expand the list of people that they're willing to help get out of Gaza into Egypt. The second piece I've been doing is just trying to advocate for some more streamlined immigration or visa type program.
In the meantime, Nabulsi continues to juggle his day job amid the growing demands of his evacuation and advocacy work.
I'm very fortunate and lucky here to have a supportive office. If we don't do something to help these people, they're going to die, frankly, from either starvation, dehydration, or an airstrike, whichever gets them first.